The dreaded chest fat. It's one of the things that we're so embarrassed about. We don't even ask people how to fix it. It's one of those things, like, we can talk about our love handles, we can talk about belly fat and stuff like that, but when it comes down to chest fat and storing fat in this region, like under the armpit, it honestly is just embarrassing. It's hard to ever even talk about it. It's unsightly and we just want to get rid of it. So I'm going to give you 8 ways to reduce that chest fat. Okay, and I'm going to be talking nutritionally, I'm going to be talking hormonally, and I'm going to be talking a little bit exercise-based. Because there are ways that you can reduce the overall appearance of it, which therefore changes the entire shape of your upper body. If you can lean out the chest region just a little bit, you'd be amazed at how much your upper body changes overall, for men and for women. So let's go ahead and let's get to it. You're tuned into the internet's leading performance, nutrition, and fat loss channel. New videos Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, and then videos throughout the rest of the week as well. I want to make sure that you hit that red subscribe button. Okay, that's very important. And then make sure you hit that bell icon, because that bell icon allows you to turn on notifications, be part of the notification squad, and know whenever I post a new video or whenever I go live. All right, without further ado, let's get into what this is all about. First and foremost, some people think that chest fat is just storing fat in your chest region. The reality is it has more to do with hormonal imbalances. So what we have to look at is something known as gynecomastia and pseudogynecomastia. Okay, I'm going to call it gyno and pseudogyno for short. All this is basically the overgrowth of specific tissues in the chest region. Now, gyno itself is an overgrowth of actual glandular tissue. It's called epithelial hyperplasia. That's not really important, but basically what that means is that's an actual hormonal imbalance that causes glands around your chest region to enlarge and grow, literally developing breast tissue. Okay. Pseudogyno is much like that, except it's the deposition of fat in that area. So glandular tissue growth versus actual fat growth. They look very, very similar, but they also feed off of each other, because what we have to remember is estrogen, which is what allows us to build that glandular tissue, is related with fat. If we have a high amount of body fat, then we have more estrogen in the body, which means more glandular tissue, okay? And then once we have more glandular tissue, we have more estrogen, which leads to more fat. You see how it's a vicious cycle? So whether you start first with just a small hormonal imbalance that leads to some gyno, or you start first by being overweight, you're going to eventually have the hormonal imbalance that causes you to have more chest fat. Now, some people are more genetically predisposed to chest fat than others. So let's talk about ways that you can actually get rid of it. So what we have to know is that it's either caused by too much estrogen, too little testosterone, or a combination of both. And again, this still has to do men and women. So the solutions I'm going to give you are simple. Number one is one that I've talked about a lot. Eat a lot more cruciferous vegetables. Okay, a lot more bok choy, a lot more broccoli, a lot more cauliflower, a lot more cabbage. I'm talking like a cup a day at minimum. It contains something called indole-3 carbinol, and this indole-3 carbinol contains something known as DIM, diindolylmethane. All that DIM does is allows the liver to process estrogen better. Yes, the estrogen that is in our body goes to the liver and gets processed. If our liver can process it, it makes it so it never turns into the bad estrogen. Good estrogen won't deposit in our chest. Bad estrogen will. If we improve the metabolization of estrogen, we solve a lot of this problem. So above all else, do that. Okay. Next up is eat a lot more in the way of soluble fiber. Okay, I'm talking about the kinds of fiber that draws in water, chia seeds, maybe some flax here and there. Be careful with flax because it can be phytoestrogenic. Okay, but really we want to be getting these kinds of fibers that are going to draw in water and move things out of the system fast. And here's why. Okay, there were actually studies that showed there's something known as beta-glucuronidase, and this beta-glucuronidase allows estrogen to be reabsorbed through the colon. So estrogen that's passing through our body can get reabsorbed into the body simply by utilization of this bacterial breakdown. So if we can decrease beta-glucuronidase, then we can actually make it so estrogen just passes through the body. This is particularly prevalent in women, believe it or not. Women that consume more fiber have less estrogen reabsorption, but it goes for men too. So just consume more fiber. Just make a concerted effort, a conscientious effort to eat more fiber. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is in the world of sex hormone binding globulin. Less about estrogen and more about testosterone finish. We're gonna pivot for just a second. Sex hormone binding globulin is something that binds to testosterone within the body. See, as men, we have, well, women too, we have a lot of testosterone that's already flowing through. But 98, 99% of it is bound to something called sex hormone binding globulin, which means that unfortunately, most of the testosterone that's in your body is bound up and can't even be used. And if we can release more of the sex hormone binding globulin and get rid of it, we can release more testosterone to be available. And more testosterone that's available means that you're gonna have less of that overall chest fat. So how do we do that? Well, there's 3 simple ways. Okay, one is gonna be consuming a lot more magnesium. Magnesium, for some strange reason that we don't know why, binds to sex hormone binding globulin. So magnesium, in a sort of non-competitive way, goes through and binds to sex hormone binding globulin, therefore temporarily releasing extra testosterone. So if we have consistent amounts of magnesium in our bodies, then we end up reducing that overall amount of sex hormone binding globulin. Next up is consuming small amounts of boron, anywhere from 6 milligrams to 9 milligrams a day of boron. Okay, studies have shown that just taking even 10 milligrams, which is a pretty decent amount, ended up increasing overall free testosterone levels by 28.3% over the course of 1 week. That's a really big effect on just taking a simple mineral. Again, science doesn't really show why this is occurring. It just seems to unleash some of the testosterone that's normally locked down. Next up is going to be making sure you get enough vitamin D, and try to get it in a whole food form whenever possible so that's bioavailable. So high vitamin D eggs, high consumption of quality fish, so you're getting good vitamin D. It makes a big difference. It does help not only the synthesis of proper estrogens, but it does help release some more of that testosterone too. Okay, now we have to get into the next phase, which is focusing on specific liver health. This sounds weird. I mean, you would think that I'm giving you some specific exercises and things like that, but I guess it's not the case, right? The liver is responsible for flushing out a lot of the estrogen. We have to take care of the liver, and the liver requires a certain amount of what's called glutathione to allow estrogen to get out of the body. If estrogen does not get handled, I guess that's the simplest way to put it, it becomes this horrible thing that turns into a vicious circle within our body. The liver metabolizes it. If the liver is not functioning well, then the liver can't metabolize estrogen and it stores in our chest, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're eating a lot of things that are containing the sulfur-bearing amino acids. So we're talking like methionine. Let me just cut to the chase. Spirulina is a great way to get this. Spirulina is a really powerful way to get the kinds of sulfur-bearing aminos that you need to actually create glutathione in the body. Glutathione is the master antioxidant, and it supports everything the liver does. This means it will allow you to metabolize more of that estrogen and get it out of the body. Now, a lot of these foods that I'm talking about are very specific hormonally balanced foods. Hormone balance is everything. Just so you guys know, there is a link down below in the description to what is called my Thrive Hormone Kit. Okay, this has got all kinds of foods that I get from Thrive Market. So I'm all big on full spectrum, like down to earth foods. Thrive Market has made it possible for me to actually create a box that has my favorite foods when it comes down to estrogen modulation and hormone balancing. So Thrive is a way that you can get your groceries delivered right to your doorstep without ever having to go to the grocery store. Okay, you're not having to get in the car, you're not having to spend the money getting there, and it ends up being cheaper than most Whole Foods trips and cheaper than most overall grocery trips altogether. But to make things even better, you can get the foods that I specifically am laying out for you. So I highly recommend after this video, you check out that link and get my hormone optimization food bundle from Thrive Market. So make sure you check them out. Okay, now let's move in to the next thing. The next thing I want to talk about is proper carbohydrate refeeds. A lot of you that are watching this channel are probably on the keto train. You're probably doing the low carb thing. That's great, but there is some power to spiking your leptin a bit with a strategic carb meal. Okay, leptin is something interesting. It's the fat's ability to communicate with the brain to let the brain know how much overall fat is on hand. So if we are slowing down our metabolism because we're dieting a lot, what ends up happening is the fat calls the brain and says, hey, go ahead and pump the brakes a little bit. We're running low on fat, or we're running low on calories. You don't need to go ahead and do this quite as much. So fat loss ends up slowing down. If we increase our calories temporarily, leptin has the ability to call the brain and say, hey, we got plenty of calories. You can go ahead and ramp up fat burning. It's all good. Ramp it up. Now, the only way that we can do this is occasionally spiking our calories or spiking our carbs. So it's important that if you are down to the last 15, 20 pounds, maybe 10, and you're just noticing fat around the chest region, a lot of times what you might need is just 2 or 3 carbohydrate refeed meals over the course of a few weeks. Now, one cardinal rule, when you do your carbohydrate refeed, do not have fats in the equation, okay? Keep it lean and clean. We're talking like some rice cakes. We're talking about like lean carbs, pasta of some kind with like chickpea pasta or lentil pasta with a lean sauce. No fats, just the carbohydrates. It's going to kick you out of keto, but it's going to allow that spike in leptin to occur that can kickstart your metabolism again so that the other hormone modulating things we're talking about are working. So I recommend like 100, 120 grams of carbs like once every 2 weeks just to spike it, only when you're on the last 10 or 15 pounds that you're trying to lose. It doesn't have to be a normal thing. The last thing that I want to talk about is exercise related. Okay? This is all about doing high intensity interval training in the fashion of things like battle ropes. And I've talked about this in other videos, but you can spot reduce if you are in a fasted state. So if you work out fasted, studies show that you can burn fat in the areas closest to the muscles that you're moving. So if I'm moving my arms a lot because I'm doing battle ropes and I'm fasted, the heat that is generated from my chest and shoulder and armpit region will burn a tad more fat in that area. Will it burn fat throughout the rest of the body? Yes, you're not only going to burn it there, but studies have shown you will burn more fat in that area. So train fasted, go do some battle ropes, move the upper body, and also just get rolling out. Use a myofascial release, use a foam roller so you're actually moving the tissue and moving fat out of it. So like literally just put your arm up, put a foam roll in your armpit region and roll it out a little bit. It makes a big difference. So with these 8 things, you have a pretty nice roadmap to getting rid of the chest fat. Okay, whether it's the last few pounds or whether you have 50, 60 pounds to lose and you just want to target the chest fat first. But also make sure you check out my hormone optimization kit down from Thrive. And whether you get that one or not, Thrive Market is probably going to save you a bundle when it comes down to your groceries. So that's just a win in general. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you in the next video.